30 days.
What are we gonna do, David? We're gonna lose everything!
No parents, just special people. That's how my son David decided to inform me that he was getting married. Not a call, but a text message sent from 3,000 miles away, just hours after the ceremony. I, Howard, his father, a widower who had just financially secured their future, was deemed not special enough. I didn't react with anger. I reacted with calculation. My career as an investment banker taught me that emotion is a liability, and this was now a financial liability. I had provided the down payment, a substantial $150,000, for David and his fiancée, Chloe, to buy their, quote, home. Crucially, I retained control. The monthly mortgage payments were routed directly from my account. Legally, they were occupants with a purchase option, while I was the primary financial backer. They loved the money, but they despised the family obligation that came with it. That two-line text message was the ultimate breach of respect. If you appreciate stories of cold, strategic revenge and financial karma, please consider hitting the subscribe button. You won't want to miss how this methodical plan unfolds. I looked at the text, then at the mortgage file on my desk. They believed they were building equity. They were building my leverage. The moment I received that text, the transaction changed from a gift to a cold business operation. My first action was surgical. I called Frank, my contact at the bank. Frank, I instructed calmly, immediately terminate all scheduled, recurring payments on the David Miller account. The notification of this payment termination must be routed only to my primary investment company address. The full financial security of their new life was terminated with a 3-minute phone call. They were living in a home rapidly spiraling into default, entirely unaware. The first official notice wouldn't reach them for over a month. They were busy celebrating their supposed independence while I watched the clock tick. They had thrown me out of their life. I was about to throw them out of my house. David's text didn't just hurt, it was data. Data confirming that their core motivation was pure, unadulterated entitlement. They wanted the benefits of my wealth without the inconvenience of my presence. As a widower, I had poured my focus into David, and this was the return on investment. It was time to divest. My call to Frank at the bank was the action. My stillness afterward was the preparation. I sat in my study, overlooking the city lights, rereading the mortgage documents, not for legal protection, I was already protected, but for the sheer satisfaction of knowing the exact, quantifiable extent of their upcoming shock. The beauty of the loan agreement I'd set up was its ambiguity for the occupants. David and Chloe genuinely believed they were paying into the mortgage, though their small monthly payments barely covered the interest on the furnishings they bought. They thought my large, consistent payments were just Dad being generous. They had no idea my payments were the only thing keeping the bank happy. Now, with 2 major payments suddenly halted, the house's financial health was failing rapidly. My plan required silence. I had to let the bank's internal notification process run its course. I imagined the subtle shifts happening in their financial file. Past due, overdue, delinquent. David and Chloe, newly married, were busy posting pictures of their honeymoon, blissfully unaware that the foundation of their future was crumbling. I needed to see them, not out of affection, but to gauge their arrogance. My legal leverage was solid, but the psychological leverage needed confirmation. This opportunity came a week later at a small, awkward dinner hosted by Chloe's parents, who were now keen to welcome the wealthy Miller side of the family. Chloe's father, a man who constantly talked about his hustle, cornered me almost immediately. "Howard, congratulations on the kids' beautiful new home," he boomed, elbowing me lightly. "They are so independent, choosing their own path. Of course, a little help from the families on securing that deed will make their fresh start complete, huh?" His eyes were full of avarice. He wasn't asking. He was confirming his expectation that I would hand over the deed immediately now that the wedding was done. Chloe and David, across the room, were laughing too loudly, glancing over to see if I was properly appreciating the hint. They were basking in the glow of their supposed victory, a free house, and freedom from the parents. I just smiled, a thin, almost invisible smile. I replied calmly to Chloe's father, "Leverage is a beautiful thing. It secures everything." I let the double meaning hang in the air, watching his smile falter slightly. He didn't understand the word, not the way I used it. I knew then that my decision was right. They weren't just entitled. They were surrounded by people who reinforced their entitlement. The silence I was maintaining on the mortgage was the heaviest weapon in my arsenal, and I was about to let it drop on their heads. The clock was ticking, and they were deaf to the approaching disaster. The dinner with Chloe's parents was exactly the data point I needed. It was an exercise in performative independence combined with blatant cash extraction. David and Chloe spent the evening talking about conscious consumerism and setting boundaries, all while living inside the $375,000 asset I largely funded. Chloe's mother, Brenda, cornered me next. She wasn't subtle. She cooed, touching my arm with a proprietorial air. She emphasized the word like it was an immutable legal fact, ignoring the complex structure of the promissory note I held. I saw the impatience in her eyes. They weren't enjoying the house. They were enjoying the idea of owning the house, free and clear, without acknowledging the source. "Brenda," I responded, my voice flat, "I think about the property constantly. I am meticulous about protecting my investments." I paused, allowing the professional jargon to create a wall. "The paperwork is all precisely structured to ensure maximum financial security for the primary investor. No need to worry about the structure at all." David and Chloe quickly joined us, sensing the direction of the conversation. David, influenced by Chloe's demanding energy, tried to assert himself. He lied smoothly. I asked, my gaze steady. This was the first hint of trouble I had given them, a tiny, almost imperceptible tremor. David looked confused, but Chloe quickly smoothed it over, changing the subject to their plans for a new, expensive kitchen island. They were so focused on the next thing they wanted, they completely missed the looming, dark shadow of the first thing they were about to lose. I left that night knowing two things. First, they believed their control was absolute, and their demands were non-negotiable. Second, the bank was now approaching the crucial 30-day mark. My quiet decision to stop paying was gaining momentum. When the storm finally hit, they would be hit not by my anger, but by the impenetrable logic of institutional finance. They were living in a house of cards, and the bank, on my silent command, was about to send the first official letter acknowledging the structural collapse. The only address receiving that letter was mine. Their false sense of security was precisely what I needed for the next phase of the checkmate. 1 month had passed since David's text and my phone call to Frank. 1 month of silence, during which 2 major mortgage payments had been missed. David and Chloe were still posting their curated, perfect life online. A housewarming party, a new designer coffee maker, pictures of their, quote, 27 independence. They were living in a bubble of blissful ignorance, protected by my deliberately engineered paper trail. I, however, was receiving notifications. The first soft default notice arrived in my mailbox, addressed to the investment company There was the legal owner of the loan's service payments. It was discreet, marked Financial Account Status Update. But the words inside were crystalline. Account status, delinquent. Amount due, X $1,000. I took the notice and placed it next to the original purchase agreement. This was the most crucial piece of documentation. It was the moment where my emotional decision transformed into an irreversible legal mechanism. I spent an entire afternoon meticulously reviewing every clause. My late wife, Martha, would have been proud of my detachment. I wasn't reviewing family history. I was checking the integrity of a complex financial instrument. The Quote 30 clause was my masterpiece. It stipulated that the occupants, David and Chloe, must maintain all scheduled payments on time to retain the option to eventually buy the property from my investment vehicle at a pre-agreed price. Failure to meet any financial obligation for more than 30 days rendered the agreement void, forfeiting all previous investments, which was essentially just their small personal contributions to furnishings, plus the tiny portion of the interest they covered. Since my large contributions were considered part of the owner's investment vehicle's liability, their personal financial risk was almost non-existent, until now. I had structured the arrangement so David and Chloe's bank account was only linked to a small, supplementary payment for taxes and minor fees, which they were meticulous about paying. They genuinely thought those payments meant they were on track. They had absolutely no visibility into the primary, 5-figure payment I was supposed to be making. This intentional blind spot was their undoing. That afternoon, David called, not to demand the deed this time, but with a slight edge of confusion. "Dad, the bank sent us a weird notice about property taxes being slightly late," he said, clearly annoyed. "Did you forget to send the check this month? It's sloppy, Dad." He was irritated by a $200 fee, completely oblivious to the fact that the actual catastrophic mortgage payment, tens of thousands of dollars, had been intentionally withheld for over a month. He was complaining about a scratch, while the entire hull of the ship was sinking. "Sloppy?" I repeated. "David, you need to be more vigilant about your responsibilities. I'll look into the tax issue." I gave him nothing. I wanted the confusion to set in slowly, like a creeping cold. He hung up, satisfied that he had scolded his forgetful father. I looked at the delinquency notice again. It was time to enter the next phase, letting the bank escalate the process to the point of no return. The soft notice was mine. The next one, the hard notice, would hit David directly, but only after I received the full demand. It was exactly 6 weeks after I received David's "no parents" text. 6 weeks of calculated silence on my part, 6 weeks of deepening delinquency on the mortgage, and 6 weeks of uninterrupted entitlement from David and Chloe. The air of smug self-satisfaction around them was palpable, reaching its peak when the call finally came. It wasn't a tentative request, it was an ultimatum. The caller ID showed David, but I knew Chloe was coaching him. Her relentless ambition was always the driving force behind his sudden bursts of entitlement. "Dad," David started, his voice strained but trying to sound assertive. "We've been talking. We're officially married now. We need stability, and we need to take control of our finances completely." I held the phone slightly away from my ear, appreciating the performance. "And what does that entail, David?" I asked, my voice calm, almost detached. "It entails the deed to the house, Dad. We need you to sign the property over to us," he stated, the need turning into a demand. "We need the title transferred this week. It's high time we finalize the property as our own, as a proper wedding gift, for tax reasons and future planning." The sheer audacity was breathtaking. They had treated me as a ghost at their wedding, and now they were treating me as a notary public for their largest asset. They viewed my $150,000 investment and 6 months of mortgage payments as a non-negotiable debt that I owed them simply for existing. You're demanding the title to a property that is currently technically owned by my investment vehicle, a vehicle that has invested nearly $150,000 into the equity? Yes. It's time, Dad. We're an adult married couple. It's the natural next step. We consider it settled. I leaned back in my chair. The time for observation was over. The time for the checkmate was now. The bank had already sent me the official notice of default and intent to accelerate, indicating that the property was now firmly on the path to foreclosure. I had the emotional confirmation of their greed and the financial documentation to execute my plan. "I understand, David," I said, my voice dropping to a level that commanded attention. "You want the deed. You want the asset. You want finality." "Exactly," he said, relief creeping into his voice. He thought he had won. "Then I suppose I should give you some finality," I responded. "I'll call you back in 5 minutes. I need to get you the paperwork you require." Acceleration notice. "Okay, Dad. What's the paperwork?" "Just text me the notary's address. We can sign tomorrow. David." I decided weeks ago that I would not finance the life of people who consider me expendable. That $150,000 down payment and the subsequent monthly contributions, all of it was an investment. An investment requires mutual respect and a clear return. When you sent me that text, "No parents, just special people," you fundamentally breached the unwritten contract of our relationship. "What are you talking about, Dad? It was a wedding. We didn't mean anything by it," David stammered, his assertion immediately cracking into panic. "Irrelevant, David. Intent doesn't change outcome in finance. You ask for the deed. I will give you the paperwork you need to understand the situation." When you sent me that text, I immediately called the bank and stopped all mortgage payments. That was 6 weeks ago. 2 major payments have been missed. The bank, as per the terms of the private loan agreement, which you failed to review thoroughly, is now moving forward with the most aggressive stage of recovery. "What? Stop paying? No, he can't." "Oh, I can, Chloe," I interjected, directly addressing her. "My name is on the service contract as the primary payee and the loan guarantor. David, you are currently residing in a property that is in active default. You were demanding the title. Instead, I have just sent you a high-resolution photograph of the notice of acceleration that the bank delivered to my address this morning." I had indeed texted the photo seconds earlier. It was clean, official, and devastatingly clear. The headline, printed in bold, uncompromising font, declared, "Notice of default and intent to accelerate commencement of foreclosure process." Below it were the details, the date of the missed payments, and the total lump sum now due to prevent the forced sale. A figure David and Chloe couldn't possibly raise. The immediate relief David had felt when I offered to send paperwork evaporated instantly. He screamed, not in fury, but in complete, terrifying shock. You can't do this. That's $150,000 of your money gone. That's the house. You're destroying us." "Quote, David, you destroyed the contract of respect. I merely executed the penalty clause. And those $150,000 are not gone. They are equity that I legally own and which I fully intend to recover one way or another. I will not finance people who do not value me. You have 5 minutes in the lobby. I am not allowing you upstairs." "Dad, you have to fix this. The bank called. They said the entire loan balance is due immediately. You can't let them take the house." "I can, and I did." You missed the crucial point of our arrangement, David. You mistook my financial support for unconditional love. It was always conditional. The condition was respect. When you sent that text, the condition was violated. This is cruel. Your own son. You're a monster. You promised us this house. You promised your grandchildren a stable home. I promised nothing about grandchildren. Chloe, quote 74, and I promised stability. Stability based on the terms of the private agreement, which required timely payments. Payments I was making until you decided I was disposable. Quote 75, Mom wouldn't want this, Dad. She loved this house. She'd be heartbroken that you're doing this to your family. Do not use your mother's memory as a bargaining chip for your entitlement. Martha understood financial discipline perfectly. If she were here, she would tell you that integrity costs less than a divorce lawyer, and certainly less than a down payment. David recoiled, realizing the emotional lever was useless. They defaulted back to denial. "We can fix this," Chloe insisted, desperation making her voice high-pitched. "We'll make the payment now. Just tell us the number."
"We'll drain our savings."
Too late. You are 2 months past due, triggering the acceleration clause. The bank is now demanding the entire outstanding balance, not just the missed payments. That is the leverage the bank now holds. Do you have the $250,000 required to clear the debt today? "You're doing this just to spite us," David whispered, the realization of my strategic, cold vengeance dawning on him. "No, David," I replied, opening the elevator door. "I am doing this to teach you that financial independence requires responsibility, not just demanding assets. Your time in this building is over. Go home and prepare for the next phase. The bank is coming for the house. You have a few weeks to find alternative accommodation." I watched the elevator doors close on their shocked, despairing faces. The denial was over. The panic had set in. Now, the clock was ticking, and they had to face the institution I had quietly unleashed. With the initial shock wearing off, David and Chloe entered the next stage: desperate, doomed action. I didn't need to speak to them to know their movements. Their bank records, which I could legally access through my standing with the loan's servicing company, a residual benefit of my initial position as guarantor, provided all the data I needed. They were running. They were frantically calling every bank and broker they knew, trying to secure a new loan. They needed 2 things: enough capital to pay off the accelerated full balance of the mortgage, and a clean enough credit history to qualify. The latter was now a significant problem. My initial setup had been flawless. Because my company was the primary payer, the credit reporting for the substantial mortgage itself was tied to my investment vehicle, not directly to them. This was meant to protect their credit. However, when the bank issued the acceleration notice, the status of the entire property became legally compromised. Any potential lender seeing the house's title status, even if they weren't the primary borrower, would instantly flag it as a highly toxic asset. No reputable bank would touch a property already in the deep stages of foreclosure. They tried to leverage their small, perfect credit scores, but it was useless. A mortgage isn't just about the borrower, it's about the collateral. The collateral was now a ticking time bomb. I received a text from David that week, a rare moment of humility replacing his entitlement. "Dad, we talked to 5 different loan officers. They all say the same thing. The house is already in too deep. We need a clean title to refinance. Can you please just pay the 2 missed payments? It will stop the foreclosure. We'll sign a contract promising to pay you back immediately. David, the bank has accelerated the loan. The entire balance is now due. Your proposal of paying 2 months' worth of installments is legally moot. The bank is demanding the principal. You must face the consequences of the acceleration clause. I knew their financial situation. Their combined savings, even after draining them, barely scratched the surface of the acceleration amount. They had chosen furniture over savings, entitlement over preparation. The clock was ticking, not just on the bank's deadline, but on the auction date I knew was quietly being set. I was also working. While David was running from bank to bank, I was contacting my own real estate investment partners. My goal was not simply to recover the $150,000 equity I had initially invested. It was to use my leverage to purchase the house back at a steep discount during the foreclosure auction. I would legally recover my investment, potentially turn a profit, and gain a clean asset. My revenge would be self-funding. David and Chloe were not just losing the house. They were losing the furniture and appliances they had poured their savings into, as legally they were now occupying a property that would be sold as is. They were facing eviction, a destroyed credit prospect for any future major purchase, and the complete loss of all their personal investment in the property. The cold, mechanical reality of the financial system I had unleashed was far more devastating than any shouted argument could have been. The day of the forced sale, the foreclosure auction, was 3 weeks after my final conversation with David. The bank had moved with the ruthless efficiency I knew so well. I did not attend the auction myself. Instead, I monitored the process remotely through the specialized investment company I had set up years ago, specifically for acquiring distressed assets. David and Chloe were not completely silent. I received one last, desperate communication, a video message from David. He was standing in the living room of the house, the expensive, trendy furniture forming a tragic backdrop. His eyes were red, and he wasn't trying to hide his despair. "Dad," he choked out, the entitlement finally replaced by raw vulnerability. "I know you're watching. The eviction notice came today. We have 72 hours. We can't pack everything. We don't have anywhere to go yet. Why? After everything, why this final humiliation? You could have just paid the $10,000 to save the account. You're watching us lose everything we worked for, Dad. Everything." "Howard, it's done," Frank said. "The property was acquired by your holding company, Asset Stabilization Ventures. You got a fantastic deal. The final purchase price was significantly below market value, even after accounting for the accelerated debt and clearing the title. You've recovered your $150,000 investment and secured a substantial profit on top of it. A masterclass in asset recovery. And the previous occupants? They have been issued the final order to vacate within 48 hours, or the sheriff's department will be involved. Since the property changed ownership in the auction, any previous agreements are null and void. They lost everything they put in." I then broke my silence to David one last time, sending a final, devastating text message. It wasn't a photo of the notice this time. It was a simple confirmation of the absolute finality of their fate. "David, the property was sold today. It was purchased by a new owner who is interested in maximizing their investment return. They will be taking possession immediately. You demanded that I transfer the asset to you. Instead, I transferred the asset to myself for a substantial profit. The house is legally mine again. The price you paid for your independence was the loss of your future." His last desperate communication was a barrage of curse words, threats, and emotional poison. The final, pathetic eruption of entitlement. I didn't read past the first few lines. I deleted the conversation thread entirely. The emotional chapter was closed. The financial books were balanced. My revenge was complete, surgical, and profitable. I had taught my son the value of respect using the harsh, unforgiving language of the balance sheet. The silence that followed my final text to David was absolute. The noise of their entitlement and panic was replaced by the methodical calm of my newly restored life. I had achieved more than revenge. I had achieved total, profitable closure. The house, now officially an asset of my investment company, was cleaned out. David and Chloe had been forced to leave their expensive furniture as moving logistics under a 48-hour eviction order proved too difficult and costly. I ordered the entire interior to be stripped and professionally staged. Within 2 months, I flipped the property for a significant profit, legally recovering my initial $150,000 investment and adding a considerable sum to my retirement fund. It was the best return on investment I had seen in years. I never heard directly from Chloe again. David sent one more email several months later, a brief, bitter note saying they were renting a small apartment and that he had lost his job due to the stress. He ended the email by stating he had changed his name and that I should never contact him again. I respected his boundary. The lesson was learned, albeit the hard way. I used the profit from the house sale to indulge in the one luxury Martha and I had always planned: extended, quiet travel. I sold the large condo and bought a smaller, more manageable property in a sunnier climate, focusing on my health and my genuine interests: reading, classical music, and methodical investment in stable, non-emotional assets. I realized that my pursuit of revenge was not driven by hate, but by a need for integrity. I had refused to allow my generosity to be exploited and my respect to be violated without consequence. My life today is quiet, prosperous, and defined by the peace of having settled all accounts. I lost a son, yes, but I regained my self-respect and proved that I will not subsidize ingratitude. I am not lonely. I am free. My late wife's words ring true every day. Emotions are a financial liability. My freedom came from cutting the loss, both emotional and financial, with surgical precision. I am an old man, enjoying the fruits of a lifetime of financial discipline and, yes, one very calculated act of revenge. I look back on that period not with regret, but with the cold satisfaction of a balanced ledger. I sleep well. Now, I have to ask you, the listener, the ultimate question. Knowing the full extent of their entitlement and the calculated betrayal, did I do the right thing? What would you have done in my place? If you enjoyed this dramatic story of financial leverage and cold, calculated revenge, please make sure to like this video, subscribe for more true stories and Reddit tales, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. The end. Thank you for listening.